like, look at me, like I'm literally fighting for my life. They just told me they have to remove my whole colon and hook me up to a feeding tube. I'm 69 pounds. This keto thing really isn't working.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. It's me, Rochelle, the real life carnivore. So glad to have you here today. I'm really looking forward to sharing this interview with you. And I know I say that every single time, but it's because it's true. I interview really cool people, and I really hope that you find some value in this interview, like Benoit did. And yeah, as always, let me know where you guys are tuning in from in the comments below. I would love to know how you all are doing. Yeah, let's dive in. All right, and without further ado, I'm so excited to introduce to you my beautiful friend, Miss Rebekah Heishman. She is a health and life coach. She's also a mom, and we're going to be chatting today about carnivore pregnancy, why she went carnivore, and how her carnivore pregnancy and postpartum has been. So without further ado, Miss Rebekah, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me here, Rochelle. It's wonderful to do this one-on-one with you. I feel like we've been chatting back and forth since before we had babies, and I'm excited to have this conversation. I feel like it could be really helpful for a lot of carnivore moms.
I agree. So let's start by you introducing yourself to the community. Who is Rebekah Heishman?
I am Rebekah Heishman. I'm 32. I just turned 32. And in May of 2019, I was Rebekah Farmer before I got married, and I was 69 pounds at 5'6". And this was due to a chronic C. diff infection that almost took my life. I had tried several rounds, 13 rounds of antibiotics, 3 fecal transplants. The C. diff was seated in my gut, and I couldn't gain weight to save my life. I also had over 10 autoimmune diseases, chronic Lyme disease. I had CIRS, I had mood disorders, I had digestive issues. So I struggled with my health for a good 13 years, but in the end there, I was really fighting for my life due to the C. diff infection. So it was a switch over from the ketogenic to carnivore diet that made a huge difference. But what made the most difference was surrendering to the Lord and just surrendering that need for control and being able to lean into his still small voice instead of my idea of, what's best. And I guess we could go down a huge rabbit hole there, but the carnivore definitely played a huge role in healing and sealing my gut, allowing me to gain weight again after not being able to gain weight for years. And I reversed every diagnosis. I gained 65 total pounds, and I got my cycle back. After about, I think it was 6 months of carnivore, I got my cycle back. I was like 104 pounds. And I had been told that I would never give birth. And I also was told that I shouldn't expect to live past 30 years old. And I am 32, and I have a thriving infant in the other room with my husband, wonderful husband. And so I'm just here to spread the message of hope. That in a nutshell is what's going on over here.
Oh my gosh, you're so cool.
So are you?
Oh gosh, to literally be knocking on death's door and to know that the Lord has led you through all of this, it just, God is so good, and it just makes my heart so full to know and see him working in so many different ways. Can you talk a little bit more about keto to carnivore? I know that you're a keto coach as well, a carnivore coach. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So I grew up in a home, we did not have a lot of like sugary snacks. My mom, we didn't have fruit roll-ups in our lunch boxes. Those were, a special treat that I got at the neighbors' houses, things like that. We never had pop in our house. So I grew up in I would say a pretty healthy home. I never ate the standard American diet. And I have a relative who is versed in keto. She wrote a book, she does retreats. And so ever since I was young, I knew that excess carbohydrates were not a good idea. I was never afraid of fat. So that was a bonus. But I will say that I got very sick all the time growing up. I was always on antibiotics. And anyways, with the ketogenic diet, I grew up in a home doing versions of keto. So I was keto for about 15 years straight before I went to carnivore. And when I got off of my medications that I took, I was on benzodiazepines, Ambien, and Adderall for 13 years. I finally got off of those. And what helped me with a lot of those withdrawal symptoms was a very strict ketogenic diet. So I went from like low carb-ish to, okay, I'm going to track macros. I'm going to get like a 4-to-1 fat to protein ratio. And that really helped with the withdrawal symptoms. It allowed me to function. I was having severe and panic attacks, ending up in the emergency room. So that was really helpful. And I felt like keto was the only sense of control that I had. I went through a lot of changes, as a lot of people do just in puberty alone, but my family relocated in 6th grade. I picked up from my childhood roots in Lambertville, Michigan, and we moved to Apex, North Carolina. We were living in a hotel for a month. I was hopping around schools. It was just like I had nothing stable to hold on to. And so I was really struggling with those changes. Puberty was hard for me. I didn't like the peer pressure. I was taping down my own breasts. I started self-harming in 7th grade. And so keto really gave me relief with the mood disorders, with the physical symptoms, the emotional upset. It just gave me relief. Obviously, it's anti-inflammatory. It regulated my nervous system. I felt that. And so as I got sicker and sicker, I felt like I have to hold on to keto because it's the only sense of control that I had. And it became an idol. It became an idol in my life. I was trusting this diet more than God himself. And there just came a point where I was literally in an emergency room and I just felt like God was twisting my arm. And it was just like me looking down at me moment, like kind of like an out of body experience. Like, look at me. Like, I'm literally fighting for my life. They just told me they have to remove my whole colon and hook me up to a feeding tube. I'm 69 pounds. This keto thing really isn't working. And so I really felt like God was calling me to surrender the obsession. There's nothing wrong with keto. It's amazing. It is. But a lot of the ketogenic foods I was eating were still harmful for me, like avocado, spinach. And later on, I became aware that oxalate was really a problem for me. It was binding to nutrients in my gut. It was preventing me from, making progress and gaining weight and absorbing nutrients. So as soon as I switched over to carnivore, I was able to start gaining weight, mitigate the ulcerative colitis symptoms, which were severe. I mean, involuntary throwing up, blood in my stools, all of that stopped pretty quickly. My mood and energy picked up within the first 2 weeks, and I had a backbone again. I was like, I have hope. But that switch over was surrender. It was me saying, okay, God, I'm going to loosen on the reins here. I'm going to use my critical thinking skills. Carnivore makes sense. Like, let's eat the most bioavailable foods and cut out the noise. It makes sense. And so there was nothing in my spirit that was like a red flag about that. And when I discovered non-aged meat, that was a breakthrough for me too, because histamine intolerance was a big issue for me. But the switch over from keto to carnivore was about letting go of meticulous tracking and control and the ideas that I thought were best. Like, I was obsessed about ketones for a long time. And then I just had to say, you know what? My ketones might have to go down for me to heal. I might have to start eating more protein. My blood sugar might start hiking up, but I really feel like this is what God is calling me to do. And it worked. So I learned a lot in that process.
Wow, no kidding. I mean, the discussions that we could have about each subjects, there's always so much depth to a person. And I know we can only get so deep when we get onto our meetings and such, but it's just so nice to hear that this has been helpful and that you were able to heed the Lord's voice when he called you. And I have to ask, did you have to go through with the awful surgery that they were talking
Oh,
to you about?
no, thank goodness. Never removed my colon. In that emergency room visit, I got in touch with the dietitian in the hospital, and she got me in touch with the chef in the kitchen. This was like a miracle that it happened. Chef was sending up hard-boiled eggs, shredded pork, and butter, and because those were the animal foods that they had, and I gained 4 pounds in the emergency room. And then they literally sent me home because I had become so stable. They were like, your glucose is stable, your electrolytes are stable. We don't know what to tell insurance anymore. You've got to go home. And so it worked. I never had to remove my colon.
Praise God.
Yes.
Praise God indeed. Okay, I want to touch on this because you were also like myself. I was diagnosed with infertility. They told me that there was no way that I was going to be having a baby unless I went through in vitro. And even then, it was considered high risk, especially me being a little bit older and that sort of thing. Like, not that I'm that old, but they consider us a geriatric pregnancy after 35. Like, please
That's
don't.
kind of crazy. That's crazy.
It's really stupid, but whatever. Can you talk a little bit about that process and like, did you stay carnivore during your pregnancy? Did you kind of do more ketovore? Like, what felt most nourishing to you?
So I did not have a period for 16 years. I never thought I would get a period back. Like, even when I started healing, in the back of my head, I was like, I think I'm going to be able to survive, but like, I'm not going to hope that I get my period back. Let's not be crazy. And then, of course, it came back, and I sent pictures of my bloody underwear to my mom and my best friend. It was such a great day. I almost saved that pair of underwear because it was so great. I was like, no, that's gross. Um, but so Tyler and I, when we got married, I got pregnant like a month after we got married, and we weren't trying, but it just happened. And so at that point, I had already reintroduced quite a few foods. I was lion diet, fatty lamb, salt and water for the first year. Then I reintroduced egg yolks and butter, egg whites eventually. Then I introduced beef, and then I started introducing non-animal foods with a lot of mindfulness. Now I eat a variety of foods. I eat berries, apples, homemade sourdough bread. But during my pregnancy, it was for sure meat heavy and high fat because that's what our bodies need. And that's what I craved. I was very mindful of the specific nutrients that I needed more of during pregnancy, like the folic acid and iodine, even just like you did. I would say the main difference during pregnancy was the extra mindfulness around those nutrients, but also I didn't want just plain meat. I, for some reason, just wanted to eat like a little kid. So I was making like carnivore pizza and carnivore chicken wings, the chicken nuggets. And I don't know why, I just needed that variety in the first trimester. But there was never a moment where I had meat aversion, which I'm so grateful for. I don't know if you had that, but I do hear of, I'm so glad. It looked like you stayed pretty high fat. You're the dairy fairy for sure.
I was the dairy fairy.
But I was just mindful, like, okay, my body's doing a lot of work. My thyroid needs extra support. So I am always hitting my protein, usually getting very, very high fat. And then I would have some variety, like maybe I'll have an apple with yogurt or something like that. So that's what that looked like. I didn't have any nausea. I had nausea for literally one morning. That was it. I had heartburn one evening. That was it. I attribute that to the stable blood sugars. It has to be because of all the protein and cutting out those processed foods and stuff like that. So pretty similar to what I eat when I'm not pregnant, to be honest.
I love it. And to me, I find it very encouraging. I also didn't have really a meat aversion. I had an egg aversion for a short period of time.
Oh,
It
interesting.
was like a few days before I found out I was pregnant. I made Bella's egg pudding and I had put steak in it. And I took 2 bites and I was like, I'm gonna throw up if I eat this. Like, what's wrong with me? Like, I love eating this. And so I put it away in the fridge, and then every time I looked at it, I was like, oh, it's gonna make me puke. This is so weird. And I mean, I still eat a dozen eggs a day. Like, I love my eggs. So I'm like, this is very strange to me. Did you have any cravings when you were pregnant? I found at the beginning I craved watermelon, which I hate watermelon. Like, actually hate watermelon. People think there's something wrong with me because I don't like it. And
Wow.
tomatoes, those were the two things, and chicken tenders, like homemade chicken tenders. I ate them almost
Interesting.
every day. It was, yeah.
I made the chicken tenders all the time, the pork rind crust and Parmesan. I made those very frequently, probably 2 or 3 times a week. And then Tyler was like, these are good, make some for me. So I was making tons of them. I craved watermelon. a lot. Actually, the other day I wanted watermelon, and Ty was like, "Are you pregnant again?" But I didn't have a distaste for watermelon. I think I just craved, I did crave fruit, but it wasn't like, oh my gosh, I need sugar, I need fruit. I was just craving refreshment. Like more, I needed more electrolytes, I needed more minerals. It was the refreshment aspect. So watermelon was very refreshing for me. And I didn't eat those things until after my protein. So like it's not like I was eating a meal out of watermelon. It was like, I'm gonna have some watermelon after my meal. Same with the apples. Mandarin oranges for sure. Those like I had one orange and then I was like, oh my gosh, that is like the best tasting thing in the world. And I ended up having like six, but they're tiny, so it was no big deal. But I didn't have any like really weird cravings. I definitely needed eggs though. There would be days where we would go out to a Brazilian steakhouse. At this time, we had like a Fogo budget. So we would go to Fogo every now and then, and that was usually all I would eat that day because it's all you can eat. And I can eat 12 steaks in a row, like easy. But then I'm done for the day. But when I went to Fogo, I would come home and I'd be like, I still need my eggs. Like I couldn't go without eating eggs every day, which I thought was very interesting. Even if I wasn't hungry, I was hungry for eggs. So I think that was my body saying, you need these nutrients. And then I definitely craved fat, which it makes sense. But nothing really out of the ordinary.
Did you have any of the fatigue that most women get with their pregnancy and first and
No,
third
I
trimester?
did
No.
not. No, the first trimester was like, am I even pregnant? Like I felt really good. I maintained CrossFit up until the third trimester, and that was mainly because we had moved and I wasn't a part of a CrossFit community anymore. But no, I didn't need naps. My energy was really good. And I would say it stayed good until I gave birth, and it still is good. And I would attribute that to really healthy adrenals and also the stable blood sugars, probably.
Yeah, I think it makes a huge difference. I know for me, I had a few days. I probably took in the first trimester half a dozen naps, like off and on. And I thought, same thing like you. I was like, is something wrong with me? Like, am I actually pregnant? Like the test said I was. Like,
Yeah,
am I actually pregnant because I'm not tired. I'm not having nausea. I had
right.
one afternoon for like a half an hour where I was kind of like, ooh, I kind of feel a little queasy. It was for me, it was due to my progesterone being too low. And that was what caused me
Mm,
miscarriage the first time. Actually, the first two times was low progesterone for me. But after getting that in an optimal range for my body, it just seemed like everything else was smooth sailing. I don't know.
yeah,
Did you experience any of that? Like, you mentioned one morning where you had a little bit of nausea and
yeah.
you like no fatigue.
Yeah, it was one morning we were about to go to church and I actually got sick, and so we didn't go to church and I felt bad. And then I felt better, of course, like a little bit later. I was like, I'm not making it up, I promise. I think it was probably unstable blood sugar, but maybe it was my hormones fluctuating. From what I tested, my lab work looked really good. So I'm not sure. It could have been progesterone fluctuating.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things happening in the body when we're
So
pregnant,
many.
as
Yes.
you know. Okay, I would love to touch on how was your delivery and how has postpartum been for you?
Yeah, delivery was awesome. I will say I had back labor, which was incredibly painful, horrible. I feel like birth would have been a piece of cake without that back labor. Like I couldn't feel anything but my back. My doula was squeezing my hips so hard. I had bruises. My husband couldn't squeeze them tight enough. I was like, I need her. But it was good. So my water broke at 10:45 at night. I had just sat on my bed. I was gonna get in bed and I just sat down and it broke as I sat down. And I was like, am I peeing myself? And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not gonna tell Tyler. And then I was like, wow, it's still coming. And I was like, my water's breaking. And it was crazy because it just kept coming. Like I didn't know there was so much fluid. We must have lost like 20 pounds when our water broke. I didn't go into like back-to-back contractions until around 3 in the morning. We headed to the hospital, and I was in labor for about 3 hours, and then I pushed for only 37 minutes. I had one really small tear, and it was amazing. I mean, most amazing experience of my life, for sure. Yeah, it hurt really bad, but it was incredible.
Oh my gosh.
It
Isn't
was
it the
incredible.
most amazing? Like, yes, it's so painful, but as soon as you like see or hear that baby, it's just nothing else matters. Like, you don't care what you just
Nothing.
went through. You're like, just give me the child. That's all I want.
It was so amazing. And I'll never forget it. I'm sure you won't either. And he just latched so perfectly, so naturally. I was just blown away. Like, I had a fear that he wouldn't latch because breastfeeding is really important to me. I've always wanted to enjoy that. It's such a gift. And I just had this fear that like he wouldn't latch and we would have issues, but we had no issues. Um, and so it was really good. I fasted for 2 days after I gave birth. I didn't want to eat. I brought bison breakfast sausage and elk burgers. We had a cooler and I didn't touch food. I was just like, I was euphoric. And I would sleep, feed him, and just stare at him. And I didn't feel like eating. I'd fasted, and I that felt really good to me. I just felt like it was, really therapeutic for my body. And then postpartum, I kept it really animal based, and I did not need variety. I was like, just give me all the meat. And actually, before I gave birth, I made a big order from North Star Bison, which is one of my favorite companies. I got a ton of their elk strip steaks and just a bunch of really delicious meat. So I was just eating huge plates of my favorite meats to keep it super nutrient dense, easy, protein packed, and breast milk supply came in really strong, so strong that I had to be pumping. We have a chest freezer dedicated to my breast milk now. And it's all gone really smoothly. So now I am back to my pre-pregnancy weight. That wasn't even my goal though. I could care less about the weight. I felt good the day after I gave birth. I was just like so proud of my body, so grateful to God that he designed us to do this, and I feel strong, and that's all I care about. I am really pleased that I'm working out again. Energy levels are good. We're sleeping, and all is well. Pregnancy can take a toll on a lot of people. I always hear stories of, oh, your hormones will never be the same again. My thyroid crashed. Oh, just wait for your hair to fall out. Someone kept saying that your hair is going to fall out. And I'm like, don't speak that over me. And it never did fall out.
Yours hasn't? Oh my gosh, I've got the
No.
post shed going on.
Oh,
Like,
really?
it's wild. I'm like, oh my gosh, am I gonna have any hair left? My
Oh, your
hair's
hair's
fine.
gorgeous. It
Yeah,
looks
it's
great
fine.
and thick.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I mean, like I pre-pregnancy, I had like I have to use like 4 elastics. Now I can use 3. That's that's how much hair has fallen
What a
from.
blessing.
Yeah, what a
Wow.
blessing to only need 3 hair ties.
Yeah,
But
that's great.
okay, so interesting. So you haven't had the postpartum hair fall.
No.
Wonder if
Mm-mm.
that has anything to do, and feel free to share about this because I know that you use the no poo method. I wonder if that
Mm.
has something to do with it because for me,
Yeah, probably.
I tried to do the no poo method several times and I just haven't got there yet. And like every time I do it, I get really frustrated and I just can't wait because my hair just looks like string pasted to my scalp. And I'm like, I can't do this. But I love apple cider vinegar rinse. I've used that for probably 5 or 6 years now. And it's my
It's
favorite way to
awesome.
detangle my hair. But can you talk a little bit about
Yes.
it? Maybe that's why?
Yeah, it could be why. My husband was the first one to try this. He heard it on like a YouTube video he watched. He's like, "Hey, did you know you don't have to wash your hair?" I'm like, "What? That's gross." And he did it, and his hair got greasy, but then one day he woke up and he's like, "It's not greasy anymore." I was like, "What?" And it totally normalized. It was beautiful. My husband has really nice curly hair. I wish he hadn't buzzed it, but it looks great. So I waited a couple months. I kept putting it off. I was like, well, I'm going to do a retreat. I don't want to be a grease ball. But I finally tried it and I did not really go through a season of greasiness. I did get dandruff for like 2 or 3 days. It was like, I have some dandruff, but then it normalized. And so my curls are thicker. I have better volume than I've ever had. And I haven't washed my hair since November of 2022. Um, that's a long time. And it saves so much time and energy. So I have videos on my YouTube channel, but you just use a couple of brushes. You have to use a scalp brush to break up the sebum so you don't get buildup, because you can lose your hair if you have buildup. And then I just use like a wet brush, brush it out with water and let it dry in a hair plop, which is a cotton, t-shirt or whatever. So that might be why I didn't have hair fallout. I think it's also, I do have clients who have hair fallout after pregnancy, and I do think it has to do with their thyroids. I have not checked my labs after pregnancy. I literally didn't show up for the appointment they set for me. I was like, no, I'm good. I don't want to see a doctor. I feel good, but I assume my thyroid is in good shape just because of my biofeedback. But yeah, now I think that not washing my hair definitely saves my hair. It makes it very strong. I will say it's stronger than it's ever been. That's for sure.
That's incredible. And I mean, to me, it makes sense about the thyroid thing. Personally, I paid and got my lab panels done because I was really curious, and like, I have not seen my numbers this chaotic in a long time. So I was like,
Mhm.
no, like I'm in the postpartum period. My body's probably still freaking out, trying to figure out what just happened.
Yeah, it's a
Um,
lot.
it is a lot. And like I personally haven't got my cycle back. Have you gotten your cycle back? Is
Yeah, I
that
did. I got it back after like 8 weeks, and I was like, maybe this is not a real cycle. Maybe it's just still shedding. It's a cycle. I mean, it's on time, it's normal. I wasn't really happy about that. I was like,
I don't blame
man,
you.
you could have
Yeah.
helped for a while, but I guess my body wants to be fertile, so that's exciting. Um,
Yeah. And I wonder if that maybe has something to do with the hair fall as well, because like your hormones balanced out so quickly.
I think
Perhaps
so.
to do with that.
I think so. Yeah.
Hmm. Interesting. Let's touch on milk supply and breastfeeding. You touched a little bit on it, how you guys have a
Yeah.
freezer dedicated for your breast milk. Can you talk about breastfeeding? How has that been going? Have you noticed any dip in your supply? Have you been fasting at all?
I've maintained intermittent fasting, so I fast anywhere from 16 to 20 hours every day. And that's just naturally how we eat. And my supply has been good. The only time I see it dip is if there's a lot of stress, which is very rare. But my husband and I do sometimes get into arguments. If that happens, I get really stressed out. It's very rare that we argue, and it really upsets me. So things like
Understandably.
that, I'll notice a dip. Or like if I really don't sleep, I'll notice a dip. But other than that, no. I pump in the morning and in the evening. And then in the beginning there, I was pumping 3 times a day just to relieve myself. Um, my doulas actually took a picture of me a couple days. Oh, what was it? No, it was 6 weeks postpartum. And I was so engorged. My boobs were like up to here. It was
Oh my gosh.
It was crazy. And it's just crazy. Breastfeeding is so wild. It's insane. I always imagined it before it happened as like, is there really going to be milk coming out of here? Like, is that even possible? But it just feels so natural now that it's happening. So it's amazing. I do notice that when I eat the fattier cuts like lamb chops, it's really strong. So we know that saturated fat is so nourishing, so good for our sex hormones, prolactin, all the good stuff. But yeah, it's been really good. Breastfeeding itself, with David, as we've discussed, it's a team effort. Like it takes two. I definitely think that I had to help him with his latch for a while, kind of flange his lips because he was getting little blisters and he was hurting me. But now it feels good. Like he's a pro, he's a natural, he has no problem finding me. or latching properly. So I would say, you know, to any moms out there watching, and I know you would agree, stick with it because it's so worth it. And it's normal. You know, it's normal for it to be a process. This is brand new for both of us. So, you know, give yourself time. Because I've heard of a lot of women just giving up, like, oh, I'm just not cut out for it. It's like you're literally created to do this. So yeah, I did get the silverettes, those little silver cups that you put on your nipples. Those were really good for relief when I was in pain. I never used any of the gel pads or anything like that. And I would say the only issue that we've had, which I think I mentioned to you, is that my supply was so strong that he was kind of like spitting up a lot. So I had to kind of pull him off because he was overfeeding and he couldn't handle it. But now, you know, we found a good balance.
Good, good. I'm so glad. And you're right, there is a transition period and our bodies have to adjust. And for me, like I found breastfeeding was really painful as well, but I also had one nipple that was like kind of flat,
Mm.
almost inverted, and like hours on YouTube University trying to figure out how to fix this for my poor little guy. And I felt so bad for him because like here he is, he's starving, he's hungry, you know, and he's trying to
Oh.
nurse and he's getting like he's like using his little fist and like banging on the breast, like, Mom, I can't get the nipple out. And I'm like, I'm so sorry, I have a bad nipple. You know? But I mean, everything has worked out in the wash. Like I haven't actually, I tried to do with the I think it's called the Medalla hand pump, the hand express, the
Yeah.
hand expression pump. I think I shared this with you in one of our chats that I tried to hand express, but like the nipple flange was way too big. And it like stuck to
Oh
my
yeah.
finger and it hurt so bad. I was like, I can't do this. I'm traumatized. I can't. But I would have loved to have pumped just to have like extra supply on hand because the milk is good for so many other things. Like you can make
Oh
soap,
yeah.
you can use it on
Yeah,
your
I've been doing
skin.
face. I'll wash my face with it. I'm like, what can I do with this?
Yeah, why not? I mean, people put it in their coffee. Like, I really
Yeah.
don't think
Yeah, I
there's
haven't
an
done that
end.
yet.
Yeah, and I like what you said about, you know, our bodies are created for this. They're designed for this. Like, God didn't give us these breasts just to look good. Like, He gave them to us so that we can nurture and nourish our babies. I just think it's the most amazing design. And like you, I was like, is there like my boobs are tiny? Like, is milk really going to come out of here? Am I going to have enough supply? But like you, I notice if I don't eat enough fat, like if I have like
Yeah.
a day, say it's like a 70-30 day, because those happen to me a lot where like I crave more protein than fat usually. I'm like, ooh, I better
Yeah.
eat some because like I literally can watch him. He's like, he'll be at the breast and he'll go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth for like 2 hours. And he's like kind of gets frustrated. And I'm like, oh, okay, I need to eat some more. And
Wow.
you know, I eat like I'll eat half a stick of butter and within a couple hours we're good again. And I'm like,
That's
wow,
incredible. Yeah.
but is it like it's that fast? Like for some people, it's that
Oh
fast.
yeah.
It is that fast. So it's very interesting. How did your tear heal? Was it really painful? Did it heal well?
The tear wasn't that bad. It just felt like burning, you know, burning when I peed. Wasn't that bad. The most painful thing was what I thought was a hemorrhoid, but it was actually my coccyx. Yeah.
Yeah.
I went to my chiropractor and he was like, "Oh yeah, it's your coccyx." And he was like, "You can expect it to hurt for 12 weeks." And like I've been sitting on a hemorrhoid pillow since I gave birth. I can finally sit without it now. And he's almost 4 months old. So that was the most painful part. And I definitely heard a pop when he was coming out. And I was like, oh boy, what was that? I
Oh
felt and
my.
heard a pop when he was coming out. And I had back labor, so I know he was very low. So he definitely stretched things out. I got an x-ray just to be safe, but nothing was broken. So that was the most painful part. I don't think I had hemorrhoids. The tear healed up in no time. So overall healing process was good, but I did have to learn patience, you know, to just, all right, don't rush this. And you were a huge help. You have been such a huge help, honestly. I didn't have anyone else to talk to that intimately. And I so appreciate you checking in on me. Like, I would tell Tyler all the time, like, I'm so grateful for my friend. It was just so nice to not be alone in that and to be reminded, like, give yourself time. You just gave birth, rest with your baby. I took 10 days off after giving birth and it was amazing. I never take time off of work or anything like that. So
Yeah, and I think that's a hard cycle to break. I took 40 days. I was like,
that's
nope,
awesome.
I'm not. And like the Bible is very specific about 40 days, like 40, 40, 40. It's like the number and time
Mm,
change. So I was like, okay, I want to give myself this 40-day period.
that's beautiful.
It just felt really nourishing to me. And also like I had so much to learn in that 40 days. Obviously, I'm still learning, but I think it's worth it. The time off, I will never have this time back with my son being this
Right.
little. And like I gave birth just a few weeks before you, and it meant so much to me that people were checking in on me. And I was like, I knew you had just moved. And I was like, oh my gosh, I just moved. She just moved. Like, we both need community right now. So I just wanted to reach out to you because I wanted you to know you're not alone, whatever you're going through. Like, I'm here to help. I may not be much help, but at least I can
It
listen.
was
And
so helpful. It
yeah.
actually empowered me to be the same way for other people too. So it was like, wow, that meant so much to me. I can definitely do this for someone else. So
Oh,
yeah.
oh, well, I'm very honored, and like watching your process has been very encouraging and inspiring for me. I can't say that I'm not a little bit jealous in the sense that you got your cycle back and I don't have mine back yet because I would like to have more children, but I also need to be patient because patience
It'll
is
happen.
suffering and it'll come when it's ready, when God says it's time.
Yeah.
Do people ask you all the time, are you going to have another one? When are you guys going to have another one?
I don't think people have asked. Not really. No, but I was asking Tyler, like, I really want to have another one. He didn't want to at first, but then about 3 weeks ago, he was like, okay, we can have another one. And he said that he was being selfish and he just wanted David all to himself. He just wanted to focus on David, but he was like, I think David would like a little brother. So we're ready
Oh,
to try again. Yeah.
oh, I can relate to your husband in the sense that like now that I have one, I'm like, okay, I just want to pour everything that I have into him. If I have a
Yeah.
second one, am I going to want to do the same? Like, obviously,
Hmm. Yeah.
I know myself, but I just, my prayer was, especially after the infertility diagnosis, I think it was like day 2 or day 3, and I was just looking at Benoit and I was like, you know what, God, if he's the only child you ever give us, he is enough. But if you want to
Yeah.
give us more, we'll take more.
Yes, same here. I've had the
Yeah.
same prayer many times. He's
Oh,
perfect.
yeah.
He's
Oh,
so
he's so
perfect.
beautiful. He's so beautiful. I love like your little videos where he's like smiling and he's out in this little stroller and you guys are out in nature. I'm like, oh, great life for a little guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Would you recommend carnivore or keto
Mm,
or ketovore for pregnancy, for breastfeeding, for those who are wanting to get pregnant?
yeah. I mean, so when people ask this question, my number one answer is yes, this is what we were designed to eat. You are literally eating only the most nourishing foods. That's not a bad idea. But I will say, transitioning for the first time to a zero carb diet during pregnancy might not be the best idea because it is a large stress. Like that transition from glucose to fat burning raises your cortisol, raises your adrenaline. So I always tell people, like, if you're going through something traumatic, if you just had a death in the family or a severe breakup, or you're already pregnant, that might be a stressful process. But before you get pregnant, I would highly recommend becoming fat adapted and going carnivore or keto because a high fat approach with sufficient protein is amazing for the body. It's anti-inflammatory. Um, I mean, we already know that our blood sugars get higher during pregnancy. We're a little more insulin resistant. So this makes total sense. It's like, I think the best thing anyone could do. I'm not against carbohydrates, but I think it's a really good idea for sure.
What are your thoughts on women who eat high carb during their pregnancy? Do you think that could be contributing to, and this is the tough question, contributing to the insulin resistance that's
Yeah,
going on?
definitely. Definitely. I mean, we see gestational diabetes for sure when women are eating. I mean, I would read forums and stuff, and they're like, I'm eating just fruits and vegetables, and it's like you're eating only sugar. You're eating a ton of carbs, and a lot of people are getting the gestational diabetes. It's inflammatory, and it's not a good environment for your baby. And then I also think that if you're eating really high carb, then you're kind of crowding out the room for you to eat high fat. And what your baby really needs is that saturated fat for their development of their central nervous system, their thyroid, your thyroid to support baby, their brain. We need fat. And if you're eating high carb, then again, you crowd out the room for extra high fat. So I would prefer people eat high fat. And if you're going to eat carbohydrates, then let it be minimal and very mindful. Um, there's just a big myth that we need carbohydrates to support our thyroids. And that's not true whether you're pregnant or not. It's not true. Even if you have hypothalamic amenorrhea, you can bring that back with fat. So I prefer the fat approach. I think it's a lot safer. I am not against people eating carbs. I'm not against carbohydrates. I eat them now. But I do think that during pregnancy, we should be extra careful to not be pulling that insulin trigger all day, every day with carbs. It's super important. I think it's really important. And I think that the pregnancy will be a lot more enjoyable too with lower carbs.
To me, it kind of makes me wonder, especially for the baby, because our blood sugar spiking, they're attached to our blood supply. Like they are
Exactly.
off of our blood supply. So it
Yep.
makes me concerned that that's kind of almost perpetuating this insulin resistance in the baby.
Oh, yeah. Well, I definitely think that it could cause stress to the baby. And I think that sets our child up. Like David is very calm and sweet and happy all the time. And I truly, in my heart of hearts, believe a lot of that is because of the way that I was when I was pregnant with him, not just raising him out of the womb, but in utero. I really paid attention to my central nervous system, and I'm sure you did. You rested when you needed to. I didn't overdo things. Even like if Tyler and I got into an argument, I would be really careful with the words that I spoke. It's like I have a living being inside of me, and everything that I say and eat and consume plays a role in his development. And I really think that the food is a big part of it, definitely. So if we are spiking our blood sugar, that causes inflammation to our brain and our body, and that also causes inflammation to baby. There would be times that, the times that I did have an apple or some mandarin oranges, I would always do that after protein. And I did notice that he would start kicking sometimes after I would do that. And it's probably because I got a little blood sugar bump, and he's like, ooh, sugar. So I didn't do that a
Yeah.
lot.
Hmm.
It's really interesting.
Yeah, I remember I had like a day where I didn't feel Benoit move for like 16 hours. And I was like, oh, and after a history of miscarriage, I was like, okay, like I need to pray about
Yeah.
this and I need to take action. So I called my midwife and she was like, I know you eat carnivore, but you may want to try something sweet just to kind of stimulate the baby. And I just couldn't
Yeah.
couldn't bring myself to like, so I had like, I think I had a little taste of honey or something like that, like maybe an eighth of a teaspoon, because being a recovered sugar addict too, I'm just
Yeah.
like, okay, this is like opening a door for me. But I just
Yeah.
remained grounded in my trust in the Lord that like I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna try this, and I just want to get the baby moving. And I think it took 2 more hours for me to start feeling him moving around. And I was like, okay, like we're okay. And I don't think it was anything in particular that I did that got him to move
Yeah.
around. I think it was just like he is now, like out of the womb. There are just days where he just needs more sleep. And like,
I know. Yeah, I see that now with David. I'm like, oh, this is what you were doing. I had a day like that. I didn't feel him move, and I did go to an urgent care. I was like, I need to hear my baby's heartbeat.
yeah,
I
yeah,
had to hear it. I was going crazy. I couldn't do anything until I knew he was okay.
yeah,
He was
yeah,
just chilling.
yeah. We did the same thing. And I like, it was, to me, it was terrifying because I'm like, now I have to go Now I have to because it's 40 minutes to the closest medical center. When you're in your third trimester or like anywhere close to your delivery date, local emergent care will not take you. You have
Oh
to go
yeah.
to main
Oh.
hospitals, which I'm Canadian. You can go to any urgent care. You can go to any urgent care and get care. Here it's totally different. They're like, no, sorry, you have to go to the hospital because you have to go to somewhere with a maternity ward just in case you go into labor. And she just put, as soon as she put the Doppler on my belly, it was not even there 5 seconds. He started moving around and I was like, yeah, I was like, okay, take it off, take it off, take it off. Because it was the first time I'd ever heard his heartbeat. I had not had a Doppler. I hadn't had an ultrasound,
Oh.
nothing. So I was like, just take it off, just take it off. Because to me, I was like, now I'm stressing because it's like, this thing is on me. And it's like, okay, I've heard him, I'm good. Like, I just
So
needed that
cute. I love it.
Oh my gosh. Okay, like we could literally talk for hours.
Yes.
But I want to ask, what would be your top suggestions for someone who's considering a keto or carnivore lifestyle?
Top suggestion would be find the fatty ruminant meat that you like and that you can afford. Because I really do believe in those ruminant saturated fats for your hormones, for being fat adapted, just to feel good. I would also say go heavy on the salt. I think a lot of people don't get enough electrolytes still. Some people don't need as much. It's true. Some people don't need any salt, which blows my mind. A lot of
Right?
people need more salt than they would expect to feel optimal, myself included. Just listen to your body and be okay with drawing outside the lines. I think that too many people are like, I need to do just the lion diet. And I don't think it's necessary. I love Anthony Chafee. He's incredible. But I personally don't think that mushrooms are going to give anyone cancer. Like, I don't think they're as harmful as people say they are. I think a lot of people stay away from carnivore completely because they can't go strict lion. Whereas I really do think a ketovore approach can still be really therapeutic and really sustainable for a lot of people. So maybe just stick with the low carb, low oxalate vegetation to start, and then try lion when you're ready. Because going from, low carb to nothing but meat can be a really extreme switch for anyone, or standard American diet to lion diet is super extreme. So my point is, do it in a way that's sustainable. Be willing to draw outside the lines. Don't put a label on it. Just focus on nutrient dense foods. Focus on that satiety, not your stomach stretching, but like you just scratch that itch. You literally are giving your body what it needs. Your body doesn't care about calories, it cares about nutrients. So focus on nutrients and so many good things will follow.
Okay, Miss Rebekah, how can people get in touch with you? Where can they find you? And are you working on any special projects you'd like to share?
We are planning a fall retreat, which I'm so excited about. We took a break from retreats, obviously, with David, but we'll be hosting one at our home in Coates, North Carolina this fall. It's almost filled up, but I'm thinking we're going to do these more frequently. So we used to do only 2 retreats per year, but this is a smaller retreat, like 12 guests, 15 guests total. And so we might be hosting multiple of these throughout the year. That's really exciting for us. And people can find me at Tailored Keto Health on Instagram, YouTube, and my website is tailoredketo.health.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you from my whole heart for being here. We literally need to do this again.
Yes.
So I hope
Thank
you're
you
open
so
to that.
much.
Yeah, I would love to have you as my guest again. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your heart and your experiences with everyone in this community. And I pray that it brings so much value to those who listen to it.
Thank you so much. Love you so much.
Thank you all so much for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I will drop all of Rebekah's contact information below in the description box. If you haven't done so already, please like and subscribe. You can hit the little notification bell so you can be notified every time I upload an episode. And feel free to drop us a comment. Let us know what spoke to you the most in this interview. Let us know what you want to hear more of. I will be inviting Miss Rebekah Heishman back as a guest on my channel at some point in the near future. So I hope that you guys will welcome her back then. Thank you again so much. And this is Rochelle, the Real Life Carnivore, signing out. Bye for now.